I had to change the story. And I
Yeah.
first had to do that by looking internally, right? And when I was able to look internally at, the things that I could control and the things I could change, then I started to feel differently. And then my external life started to change as well.
Mhm.
So for the longest time, I was chasing all these things that I thought would make me feel better. But the problem with that is I was solving the wrong problem.
Welcome back to another episode of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. And today's guest, I'm so excited to bring you Jon Baer, who is in substance use recovery, which is near and dear to my heart because I started my career way back in the day, like 1988, I believe it was, doing substance abuse work, inpatient and outpatient, primarily outpatient. But yeah, and then my next career move, I actually was a psych director of a small program, and I revamped their chemical dependency track because it wasn't up to snuff. So, but again, back in the day, so I'm sure it doesn't look anything now like it did back then. So I'm breaking you an expert, Jon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I'm hoping, this episode is part of the neurodiverse playlist, which means FASD is just sat amidst all the other forms of neurodiversity. And so I know you're somewhere else on the spectrum than I am, but let's get to know one another and give the audience a taste of, oh yeah, I really relate to that too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm super grateful and excited to be here, Patty. Thank you for, having me on and letting me join.
Yeah.
The whole, recovery has been a part of my life for a very long time, as well as, active addiction. I started, using when I was, 14 years old. I was
Mhm.
an IV heroin user at 16, and I spent years just trying to really just figure out a way for myself to feel okay. And from a very young age, if I back up a little bit, I've had some trauma. My mother had passed when I was 10 years old of cancer. It kind of rocked my world as you would imagine.
How not? Yeah.
Yeah, being a young kid, my dad had his battles with alcohol after that, and it
Yeah.
was just a very, very hard time. And when I got into using, when I first picked up a drink at 14, right? It really just it wasn't like, oh, this is what I want for the rest of my life, but it got me out of my comfort zone. It got me out of
Yeah.
my head. It got me to mingle with friends. It got me to, you know,
Yeah.
be able to talk to people and feel just not this like jolt of anxiety
Mhm.
and this pressure to act and seem a certain way and just be a little bit more loose. And it really just kind of did exactly what it was supposed to do for someone
Mhm.
like me. And that was give
Mhm.
me relief that I just couldn't find myself.
Yeah.
And I think along the road, what had happened is this kind of path that I ended up taking crossed a line somewhere. And that line was this didn't become a thing that was a way to escape whatever world I was in. It really became a necessity to me to just be okay because I didn't drink to black out. I drink to feel okay. I didn't
Mhm.
use to overdose. I used so that I could function within life.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the way that I looked at things is part of the reason I used was because of the trauma that I had experienced and people, they weren't,
Yeah.
it was almost like a reason for me to continue to use.
Well, yeah, and your father was modeling that also,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, he was kind of chasing, those
Mhm.
things that he felt like
Mhm.
he needed to either like escape from and get
Yeah.
relief. I think
Escape the
part of the
grief.
escape the grief, escape the having to do this on his own, escape to not understanding what was happening and what his
Yeah.
next steps was and how to face life
Yeah.
now. And for myself, it wasn't so much the escape, it was more that there was just something that didn't feel right inside of me. And I couldn't function like I saw normal people functioning out in the world, and I needed to be able to, do that. And that's exactly what it did, right?
Yeah.
Until at some point it kind of like crossed the line.
Until it didn't.
Until it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, what happened is I got sober pretty young. I was 22, when I got
Congratulations.
sober. So I started young, and I fortunately, for me, I ended up in a program, where we did a lot of what's called 12-step work,
Mhm.
and that showed me a lot about within myself about taking accountability, but accountability in, like, the right areas as well.
Yeah.
Because something that I realized was the situations and the things that I've done were a lot of them were of my making, right? The way I perceived the
Mm.
world, the way I perceived life, the way I perceived other people. And in order
Mhm.
for me to change my scenario or situation, yeah, I really just had to rewire my brain on the
Yeah.
way that I look at things.
Yeah. You
So
had to
what I
change
did,
the
and that
story.
I had to change the story, and I
Yeah.
first had to do that by looking internally, right? And when I was able to look internally at, the things that I could control and the things I could change, then I started to feel differently, and then my external life started to change as well.
Mm.
So for the longest time, I was chasing all these things that I thought would make me feel better. But the problem with that is I was solving the wrong problem.
Mm.
The problem that I had was an internal problem. Until I was able to find that and learn that, someone was able to teach me, then I was able to solve the real problem and change,
Yeah.
who I was really as a person.
Yeah. But our society though, it tends to chase after external strategies
Hmm.
without ever addressing the internal reality of the way that we're wired.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Yeah.
100% right. And it's even more so, with technology and the things that we have and social
Mhm.
media and getting to see, a glance into everybody's life within a touch of a button
Yeah.
and things that you think you need in order to get where you need to go in life.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really just not the case, right? It's really I think everybody, whether you're in active addiction or you're in recovery, everybody has things that they have different obsessions with and different ways to cope and different things that maybe aren't the best for them within life. And it's really an internal thing that they
Yeah.
need to kind of work through. And that
Yeah.
path might look different for everybody. And I think me coming up on 14 years in May, this recovery journey it's been like this. It has
Mhm.
been up and down, and I am, newly finding out different things, about myself. I've been recently diagnosed with autism and ADHD.
Okay. HD. Yeah.
AUDHD.
Odd.
I'm an
Yeah.
ADHDer. My other son is, my daughter possibly, and then my
Okay.
wife, as well. And a lot of this is newer kind of development,
Yeah.
and this is a new growth stages for me. But you know, I
Yeah.
I'm starting to replay a lot of my life as a kid and realizing, this uncomfortability and this like being part of a world that wasn't meant for the way that my brain works and operates
Yeah.
a lot of my using ended up becoming, right? Not necessarily the trauma, which was a portion of it, but
Yeah. Well, I see how this fits. It does a lot of our own behavior stems right from the stories we tell ourselves
mhm,
about the things that are going on around us.
mhm,
And until we have that identification, maybe or maybe not diagnosis, but at least self-identifying
yeah,
with some type of neurodivergence. Until that happens and we start learning and growing in that area, we don't have the language to pinpoint exactly what those dynamics are, all the microaggressions that come to people who are wired differently from the neurotypical world
yeah,
because we don't process the world the same way. We don't interact in the same way. We have our own developmental timelines, whether it's just a global developmental age or whether it's skill set specific. We have our own pace in life
yeah,
and our own
yeah,
needs in life, but without the language from that, we're at the mercy of adopting the stories that the neurotypical people give us for
yeah,
our behavior. It's who wouldn't want to run from that,
yeah, yeah. We
right?
we are in a system developed by neurotypical, and
Mhm.
we're not,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the biggest thing. And I'm grateful we're also in a time now where more and more of this is kind of coming out, and
Mhm.
more therapists and coaches and psychoanalysts and doctors and clinicians are more aware of
Yeah.
this, of the spectrum, because it's very wide. Because, growing up, it looked a certain way,
Yeah.
and it's that's just not the case. And
Yeah.
now it's, coming out a lot more. We see a lot more people being newly later in life
Mhm.
diagnosed, and just starting to kind of replay back, their whole really like life, and
Yeah.
starting to like understand what like I understand now, like where I was, masking, and where I was trying to
Yeah.
fit in, and how I was living in a world really designed not for the way that
Yeah.
I think, and why I went to using to feel that relief.
Yeah. Yeah. John, I'm really curious. You mentioned that your sons are diagnosed.
Mhm.
Is learning about AuDHD, or learning about autism, learning about ADHD, learning how it looks together, is that what made you start looking at yourself in the mirror with those qualities?
Yeah, so my son being diagnosed with autism, and I was totally upset when he first got the diagnosis, because I didn't understand it,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, how, there's no way that, he's autistic. He doesn't look a certain, he's not doing things that I would portray in my mind
Yeah.
that would look like, because I wasn't aware. And then I started to like look at some of the ways that he thinks, and some of the ways that he acted, and
Mhm.
some of his sensory overload, and
Mhm.
when he was like being emotional, and it was different. It was different than when I would see
Yeah.
another kid maybe his age. And then I started to just read up and understand a little bit more. And then I
Yeah.
started to go, well, I kind of act this way with this and this.
Mhm.
And I started to revisit my childhood, and, things that, maybe I would
Yeah.
do over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was just, as I started to learn, I was like, it kind of feels like I'm looking at myself in a way
Yeah.
in certain situations. And that's when me and my wife, we looked at each other, we're like, I think we should go for a neuro eval.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of opened the door,
Yeah.
to a lot of that. And now,
Not to play doctor or anything, but unless your diagnosticians asked about prenatal exposure to alcohol, your diagnosis story may not be done.
yeah, yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
thinks to
maybe.
ask about that, right? It's
Hmm.
uncomfortable, it's
Hmm.
stigmatized,
Yep.
but both ADHD and autism are what we usually get labeled with first. And oftentimes it's a partial diagnosis. It's so many of the characteristics are just in common across the board, but it's not a complete picture if nobody asks about that. I was just talking just the other day, that we see the same dynamic where
Hmm.
it's the kids get diagnosed, then the parents realize
Yeah.
this feels really familiar.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And,
Yeah, exactly.
my audience, if I were to say, how old was I? If we had the
Yeah.
audience here in person, they would all go, 56. I recognized what was going on, right? I was doing a deep dive into FASD to help the kids and families on my caseload as a social worker. And I was like, wow, and I'm fortunate my mom was still lucid enough at the
Mhm.
time that I could, when I asked her, "Did you drink when you carried me?" She's like, "Oh, yeah, every day," because it was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
1960s. Nobody knew any better. AS wasn't discovered until
Mhm.
1973. Of course, we know FASD has existed as long as alcohol has.
Mm,
But now we're also learning that FASD changes to the baby's brain and body
mhm.
also come through the sperm. We just don't call it FASD. We don't call it anything at all, really. But it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just you're swimming in alcohol, right?
Mhm.
But the changes are profound, but because they are more easily recognizable as all these other things that people are more familiar with,
Mhm.
that aren't stigmatized, that have services. A lot of
Yeah.
people say, oh, a lot of providers will say, well, I realize there was alcohol there, but the services are attached
Mhm.
to ASD. We're gonna call them that.
Hmm.
And that way your son will get services or your daughter
Yeah.
will get services, but those services don't necessarily hit the mark. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think you're 100% right. And I think, our part is to really spread, advocate, what is out there
mhm.
and bring that to kind of the forefront because that's how these things start to
Yeah.
change and that's how
Yeah.
you get to, hey, this is real and
Yeah.
then we need services for this and this
Yeah.
is why.
Yeah. Like if you were to there's a diagnostic manual called the DSM that
Hmm.
therapists and psychologists and medical doctors use across the board. If you look up autism and what are the characteristics of it, 100% of what's in there for ASD is also FASD.
Hmm.
100% overlap, so but somehow
Yeah.
somehow we have to make the change on the training end
Hmm.
for doctors and therapists and social workers so that more people recognize it and can better serve their peeps, their clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A- Absolutely. And I totally agree. And I think it's a part that I'm starting to understand a lot more,
Hmm.
really, because like even in like recovery told me, it showed me how to kind of like live a life maybe on more terms without being able to use,
Yeah.
right? That I
Yeah.
can live among people, neurotypical people or the world, right? And I have the right tools and subsets to get me through, situations, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't really learn how to heal, and I didn't
Mm.
really learn how to regulate my nervous system, or the things that I've been doing was actually either stimming or regulating the things that I needed to regulate from my
Mhm.
anxiety for the things that I've had. And I've always
Yeah.
kind of wondered within my recovery now, I've gone from A to B, but I still feel different. I still feel like
Mhm.
there's things, you know what I mean, that are missing. So the
Yeah.
more that like we can make people aware and the more that we can have the right, not necessarily the right diagnosis, but that there's enough out there and people are speaking about all these different things,
Mhm.
FASD, ASD, ADHD, right? The more that we can start to help people, right, regulate and have the right tools and the things that they need so they can just feel
Yeah.
like the difference within life and understand,
Yeah.
hey, you're not broken, you're not a
Yes.
failure, you're not wrong, right?
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
you've just been stuck in
You've been misunderstood.
you've been misunderstood.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned what and my mind's spinning in a bunch of different directions, so forgive me
Mhm.
for that. I'm thinking, because I started my career in addictions, 12 stepping is huge and it's powerful and it is what works for so many people. But that too is neurotypical, is it not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, absolutely, especially for people that are extremely hard on themselves already. You're
Oh,
asking to be more disciplined. You're asking to be, you know you know,
yeah.
kind of the blame to every single situation,
Yeah.
right? And I think it can only really, it can only go so far, right? Before you
Mhm.
kind of like hit a wall.
Yeah. So how do you recommend tweaking that? Right? I see your posts and it's,
Mhm.
recognizing that because as neurodivergent people we start using
Mhm.
for, in ways that are similar to neurotypicals, but in ways that are
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
Recovery has to be neurodiverse
mhm,
aware,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
honor our differences. How do you see that playing out?
I mean, it's tough. It's tough if people aren't aware of their own body and their own regulation and their own
Mhm.
nervous system and things like that. People are in different places within their life. People have different traumas. People have different everything. So I
Yeah.
think, you find something that's kind of like working and you have a foundation, and I think, for myself at least, it's more than just being sober, right? It's like I want to be happy and I want to be comfortable in my own body. And I have to
Yeah.
figure out that, where I'm not. And I need to do my own digging and my own research around it. And I
Mhm.
think when you go into a program like the 12 steps, right, you're looked as like you keep an open mind, trust the process, go through the program, and you do
Mhm.
that, right? And then in many ways, things start to get better, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is you start to reclose your mind, right? That this is what's worked for me. This is
Mhm.
the only thing that's going to work for anybody else. And I know that because I've been through it,
Yeah.
right? And I remember hitting a place around, 3 to 5 years sober where I was almost at like my low because I just felt like, I couldn't help enough people or no one was listening or doing,
Mhm.
whatever it
Mhm.
was, or like why people wanted to go a different route. Like, don't they know it's not going to work? And I think at some point we like reclose our mind and then
Yeah.
we kind of need to reopen it,
Yeah.
right? Or to let in other ways and other ways that people can be in recovery or, need help within their journey or start to question some of the things that you've learned because at some point there's other things that are underlying that maybe we haven't really dealt with that are bubbling up
Mhm.
and you feel like you should be at a different spot within like yourself than you actually are. So
Yeah.
when I started to reopen my mind, then I started to be open to more ideas and more suggestions in ways that could be more beneficial to me,
Mhm.
not just
You know,
what I was taught.
I heard you did not say the word, but nonetheless, I heard a should in there.
Hmm.
I'm not where I should be,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
value statement imposed from the outside, right? Others'
Exactly.
expectations. Dang it, we fall victim once again.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, and yeah, and it's hard, and it's life, and those are things that you kind of I even battle with, right? And
Yeah.
and
Oh, we all
and
do.
being
Yeah.
neurodivergent, it
Yeah.
tenfold, right? I'm at
Yeah.
300% trying to get where people are at 100%,
Yeah.
and my mind is going in all different directions, and I'm watching everybody else, and I'm also trying to focus on my stuff, and I feel like I just can't. I'm always playing catch up,
Oh,
you
it's
know?
exhausting, isn't it?
It's
It's
absolutely
absolutely
exhausting, and
exhausting.
I'm trying to play in the system, you
Yeah.
know, that's just really not
Yeah.
built for the way that I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm curious, did you find recovery a little smoother? I mean, not that it's ever easy, right? But did you
mhm.
find it a little smoother, perhaps, or a little less effort the more you learned about yourself and your neurodivergence? Like what are your particular neurodiverse quirks, right?
Yeah.
The way you're wired. Did that make it easier?
Absolutely. Also, it also like gave me concepts and the things that I was doing. It put that like into context, right? Like,
Okay.
why do I need to stand up right now when I'm in a Zoom or talking to
Mm-hmm.
somebody? Because I feel more grounded with
Mm-hmm.
my feet on the floor. Why do I
Yeah.
need to walk before I have like an important meeting or important phone call, right?
Yeah.
Because I need to let the energy in my nervous system regulate. That's
Yeah.
how it happens. And I
Yeah.
and why do I have a color coordinated calendar for my personal life, work life, all these tasks and meetings, right?
Yeah.
Because I need to keep myself organized or else I'll just kind of drift off and
Okay, what color am
nothing
I?
will get done. What color? Purple.
All right, I love purple.
Yep, yep, yep. My meetings are purple. Yeah, you'll see a post come out probably later today around it. So yeah, my calendar looks like a Skittles commercial.
Oh, that was off topic. But okay, here's a total bunny trail. Purple is the color of royalty.
Yeah,
And it's what Patricia means is of nobility. So there you go. You gave
it
me the
makes
right
sense.
color.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's great. But
Yeah.
yeah, it started to things started to get put in context, right? And what I
Yeah.
was doing, and it started
Yeah.
to make sense. And then it was
Yeah.
like, okay, there's a lot that I do to help really regulate my nervous system that I'm
Yeah.
not even aware of. And now I can really tap into this and start to learn more about
Yeah.
different things that I should be doing to
Yeah.
make me more comfortable.
You mentioned going for walks, right?
Hmm.
Before you have a big meeting or something that has created anxiety before you. Before
Hmm.
that thing happens, you go for a walk, right?
Hmm.
As a species, that's how we are created to discharge stress from our
Hmm.
lives is through movement, right? But what's going on in our society? We're chained to a desk 9 to 5, right? Our kids, they've pretty much gotten rid of recess.
Hmm.
And what do they do if a kid acts out in school? They pull recess, the very thing they need more than anything else to re-regulate.
Yep.
They
Yep.
take it away. So that's, even if it's tapping your leg against the leg, your foot against the leg of the table in a meeting, nobody likes that.
Yeah.
But it's movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
movement, and it discharges just enough of the stress that you can
Mhm.
focus on what's being said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and how many times of like even myself had sit down and shaken my foot and someone goes, can you please stop that? And
Mhm.
it's again, it's an environment, the environment
Yeah.
around me isn't made for the things that I need
Right.
in order to be my best self,
Yeah.
productive, and feel okay. And a lot that I've started to see about playing to other people's comfort. But now I'm
Mhm.
just realizing that a lot of these things that I've done within my recovery and without my recovery was things that I needed to feel comfortable. So,
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed by the things that I've seen you post,
mhm,
on LinkedIn, because we have to find a way of meeting the sobriety needs of folks who are neurodivergent better if we want them to have a successful sobriety, right? And until we can meet those underlying needs better, they might be dry, but dry and sober are different things.
yeah, yeah,
They're still going to be feeling bottled up and miserable inside unless those underlying needs are met.
yeah,
That doesn't happen with a model that says be accountable. Sure, we all need to be accountable,
mhm,
but we don't need to be the blame for everything, right? Like you were saying
yeah,
earlier.
yeah. I
We
mean,
cannot we can't continue being responsible for other people's comfort. We have to learn to be honest with ourselves, with others. We need to be able to speak truth in love.
mhm, yeah,
That's something a lot of people struggle with,
yeah.
but we have to have those underlying needs met. Excuse me, I don't know what happened to my voice there.
You're 100% right. Like people need to, be honest. They need to take accountability in the right areas, but
Mhm.
it's got to be a little bit of softer of an approach because I think within neurodivergencies in general, we just happen to bottle up a lot inside, and
Yeah.
we are already very hard on ourselves. Because I remember
Yeah.
even like in early recovery, someone tell things of like you can't do this or you're going to relapse like that someone like me, I take that to an extreme. I remember, actually talking to somebody early on in my journey, and he was like, "Hey, if you litter, like you're not living honestly or truthfully, and you're gonna end up, relapsing." And
Mhm.
I didn't realize at the time, what I do now by the way I think, but I took that extremely literally, and it
Mhm.
put me in the biggest fear of like, if I throw a gum wrapper and it misses the trash can, like what could happen? And I think
Yeah.
it's just it
Yeah.
really was detrimental to
Yeah.
the way that I thought. Maybe to some others it seems overbearing, but
Yeah.
for me, I took that to a place inside that was really living in fear for a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
early on that like, "Oh my god, if I do this, like, this is what's going to happen." And I
But
think yeah.
so many of us have that struggle though, John,
Mhm.
right? If
Yeah.
we're concrete thinkers, right? If
Mhm.
our brains are wired in such a way that we really struggle with abstract
Mhm.
concepts and we're very black and white,
Yep.
then we're going to take that statement and we're going to let it rule the roost, and
Yes.
to an unhealthy degree, which is, what you experienced.
Yeah.
I
And that's
think,
where the change needs to be.
yeah,
That's what I think, right? Is like that is where the change needs to be in helping people with neurodivergence
yeah,
and substance use disorder.
yeah,
Is you can't do this. You're not, like there has to be the softer approach that's
yeah,
going to fit with their brain to understand in a
yeah,
different way, right? That it's okay if it's okay
yeah,
to fail. It's okay,
yeah,
for you to be wrong in situations. It's okay to slip up and make
yeah,
mistakes,
yeah, because
and
we're
it'll
all
help
human.
because we're all human. Yeah.
You know, I know with alcohol and I'm sure all substances and addictive activities, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's a chemical or a behavior, addictions, they capture that whole GABA and and serotonin and dopamine, that trifecta of neurochemical processes in our brain. But we are designed to be able, our brains are desired to be able to restore regulation naturally. But when we use a substance or an addictive behavior to get that dopamine hit, it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
And gosh, that shortcut, it seems to bring the relief without the hard work. And that's attractive in itself, not having to put the work in, because it's uncomfortable to sit with stress for whatever reason. And I think eventually we get so used to those quick fixes that they take over. They take over.
Yeah. Yeah. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
And then you do it enough and you continue to do it, you really can't get out of it until the fixes aren't fixing anymore.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of stuck
I
in the loop.
think, see how this sounds. I mean, because, we're kind of colleagues in this addiction living experience state. Would a retooling of the recovery direction as a system, the way we do it, would it be better served to be inclusive of all neurotypes, regardless of whether someone has a diagnosis or not? Just assume that everybody is neurodiverse in one way or another. Everyone that walks in the clinic doors, because that way it's a process of self-discovery that can kind of fill that gap. When you take those substances away, because something's got to fill that up again. And that the ahas that come from self-discovery, they're powerful, aren't they, my friend?
Yeah, 100%. I 1,000% agree with that.
Yeah.
And it is.
When I had my own aha moments, all of a sudden, having good lenses in my frames, it's like, look, I could see my childhood, my adolescent, those awful transitional years, where I did some really stupid stuff, Those are hard years for anybody, but for those of us who are neurodivergent, it's like, wow, I'm still here. I'm still here. That's cool.
Yeah.
But looking back over that, everything is reframed, in a way where we can really wrap ourselves in self-compassion. I'm wondering if that would be that the recovery industry could ever embrace.
I mean, I think so. Like, I believe it should be like that because at the end of the day, it only gives people more tools to learn more about themselves and to change the things that they need to change more rapidly and get more relief, right? Because it's mind, body, and spirit, right? And it's the kind of the trifecta of everything. And the more that you can teach somebody about their body and the things that they need, right, in certain situations, the better equipped they are, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, right? The difference between me is I need to do these things, right, in order to kind of like fit and move on to like the next step. What it might do for somebody that's neurotypical is just give them extra relief and extra sense of purpose and an extra sense of like yearning to help others, right? And a deeper understanding of everybody as a whole. So I 100%, agree on that. I mean, we work with a guy at our treatment center that actually comes in and shows everybody how to do fly fishing knots and will, sometimes after on like the weekends take them out and do fly fishing because there's very, very good studies with people that have cancer that go out and do fly fishing and then, they're being treated and all of a sudden they're in remission, right? So he's trying to reinvent ways that like people can be in their body and nature and
That's
things.
exactly it. They're having a very grounded experience.
A grounded experience.
They're in clean air. They can feel the air movement across. I mean, they're getting so much natural stimulation, the air passing across their face, right? There's the water, and the sound of the water is very soothing, right? That grounds us. The feel of our feet on the earth, that's very grounding. It's different than our feet on concrete or our feet on the floors of our home, right? Yeah, that's not surprising at all.
And even just the repetitive motion, right? The
Yes.
movement.
Yeah.
The releasing of energy and things
Yeah.
like that. So, there are
Yeah.
people that we try to work with, and I know others that are trying to bring in these different types of maybe not necessarily modalities yet, but just working in areas to kind of help everybody as a whole, and try
Mhm.
to change where we can
Yeah.
and see what works
Yeah.
and do a little bit of everything, right? It's experimenting and making sure people treat the whole person rather than just
Yeah.
the symptom, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because all behavior is just and really even all our emotions, they're just
Hmm.
messengers.
Yeah.
I mean, what are our core needs as people? To know that we matter, to know that we're seen and heard, right?
Hmm.
And to be able to make sense of ourselves and our place in the world. And unless those three things are met, we're still going to be off and uncomfortable in our skin, and there will still be the temptation to use the
Hmm.
shortcut.
Yeah.
For those of us who are neurodiverse, oftentimes we've grown up with those needs not being met.
Hmm.
We've had the food in our bellies, we've had the clothes on our back, the shelter over our head, and yet we've not felt that we mattered necessarily because our needs were continuing to be unmet. We've not felt seen or heard because nothing's changing in our inner world.
Hmm.
And we don't understand ourselves because no one's able to give us the words to describe what's going on.
Exactly.
And I had a guest on a little while ago. In fact, I think it's next week that the second half of the conversation is coming out. But she talked about, do you remember from school, the bell curve?
Yep.
And most people are up here at the top of the bell, right? And it's
Hmm.
these little outliers who are the abnormal ones, right? It's
Yep.
the
Hmm.
outlying 5% on either side. But she said, and I've keep thinking about this because it really was powerful. Neurotypical is really that exact center spot.
Hmm.
Well, how big is that exact center spot compared to all of this and all of that? This is the minority.
Hmm.
This is the
Yeah.
1%.
Yeah.
The rest
You're
of
right.
us are neurodiverse to one extent or another. And so having that universal approach be honor diversity
Hmm. Yeah.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why, you know, these podcasts and so many others and a lot is kind of coming out now is because people are starting to recognize that and understand
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
That they don't feel like their needs are getting met in this
Yeah.
world. And it's now we have maybe a name for it or just a tools to be able to understand it
Mhm.
and change the things that,
Yeah.
they can change or control or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think too that, I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, you
Mhm.
look at autism and, 30, 35 years ago, their mothers were blamed,
Mhm.
right, for being emotionally aloof,
Mhm.
emotionally unavailable. They were called refrigerator mamas,
Mhm.
right? They were to blame for
Yeah.
their child's predicament and you know, a lot of stigma.
Yeah.
But as a whole, as a community, there's been so much advocacy that's been very effective, right? Yay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can we do that with
Yeah,
FASD
yeah,
now, please?
yeah, yeah, my turn, I'm ready.
Right? Because if and the statistics are horrible, right?
Mhm.
Here in the States, the CDC says that FASD is 5% of the
Yeah.
population. That's 1 in 20.
Mhm.
That's conservative. Canada's researchers are saying, no, no, no. For North America, a conservative figure is 8%.
Mhm.
That's 1 in 12
Mhm.
people being affected by the effects of prenatal alcohol exposure. That's 2 to 3 in every classroom whose needs are not being met, right? And if you look at the diagnostic rate, when children are identified as for their problem behaviors, right, or their stuck spots in learning, they're referred for testing, but the scores are all over the map. So there's scattered findings. We don't know what's going on with this kid, but the scattered findings are the findings. That is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pattern for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The diagnostic rate truly For those that end up with the accurate label, 0.01%.
Yeah.
That's that's not good. So it kind of opens your eyes to, if you think about how many people you know, not social media followers, most
Mhm.
of whom are bots anyway. So not social media followers, but how many people truly do you know? The people that you work with, in your neighborhood, that you worship with, that you hang out with, you on sports and in our real worlds, our real lives. How many do you know? If you know 100 people, that means 1 in 12.
Mm,
You know a lot of
yeah.
people who are affected by alcohol who may not have a clue. And so, really, I would love to see that change. Where can we affect the most change? We have to affect it with the medical schools and nursing
Yeah.
schools and social work schools and therapy schools, but we also have to change it in the recovery community, because if when we're battling for our very lives, which we are with addictions, we have to be able to give people the language to express what's going on in their inner worlds that make
Yeah.
them uncomfortable enough that they
Mhm.
need to tune something out
Yeah.
to function.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it.
Quiet the static in their head. Yeah.
It's education everywhere, because I look at even myself as like a parent, and like that that's really where my education began, was
Yeah.
looking at my son and then being able to go, okay, like the way that he thinks is a little bit different, and
Mhm.
pushing myself to learn a
Yeah.
lot more. So schools, recovery community, yes, but just everybody in general,
Yeah.
just having more education on what's out there and
Yeah.
challenging thoughts, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, people in general is part of kind of the problem.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the box that, at least for me in school, and was
Yeah.
it didn't fit my mold and my thought, and having to reach for this.
Schools did not work well for my brother either. He's 10 years older than me. He's 71 right now,
Yeah,
almost 72. Yeah, schools didn't know what to do with him
yeah,
back in the day. They had no clue. So my other brother and I were always like, "Oh, you're Mark's sibling."
yeah,
So it's like, roll the eyes. Okay, it's going to be
yeah,
that kind of a year
yeah, yeah, yeah,
until they figure out I'm a very different person than my brother.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Not better, not worse, just different. I'm convinced now that he has FASD a lot louder than I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most likely, most
Yeah.
likely.
Well, yeah, because it was early in my parents' marriage and they were
Yeah.
drinking all the time. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yep.
schools do it too. And teachers will often say, I don't have time
Yeah.
to invest in treating your child differently.
Mhm.
But they don't realize that the principles of how you interact with someone who's neurodiverse, if you
Mhm.
apply those principles universally to everybody, the
Yeah.
job actually gets simpler instead of harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of work ahead. Tell me about the company that you're with. Well, what's your role in the
Mhm.
clinic you work at, the recovery center?
Yeah, so I'm not a clinician. I run director of community outreach and admissions.
Okay.
So I'm out there spreading the word, letting people know about our services and what we
Mhm.
do. And then kind of that first phone call from when somebody comes in, are you a good fit? What can I help you with? What are you looking for?
Yeah.
Where can I be? And I think that's, an important approach, especially like in recovery, is
Yeah.
it's not just about getting somebody in, the door, but is this the best fit for you? Let me
Mhm.
understand
Mhm.
everything about you, and then I can let you know if I think that's something we're going to be able to help with. So
Yeah.
we do outpatient, full day programs, half day programs. We have
Mhm.
evening programs, substance use disorder, alcoholism, and then we have a full built out mental health track as well.
Okay.
And then within our tracks, we have specific neurodivergent tracks,
That's awesome.
substance use and mental health, right? That the
Mhm.
needs are a
Mhm.
little bit different.
Yeah.
And we have breakout groups to help people, with those in the right areas that they need help with, that we can devote
Mhm.
a little bit more time. And it's just like just a little bit of a different approach. So I think that's where we thrive and where we're trying to kind of reshape what mental health looks like and what
Mm-hmm.
substance use and alcoholism kind of like looks like and how we can just be more inclusive,
Yeah.
to everybody and being able
Yeah.
to treat them. So, and
Well,
I love it.
there's some research out there that postulates that depression,
Mhm,
anxiety, even PTSD, they're not
mhm,
disorders at all. They
mhm.
are responses to trauma,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And and especially as it relates to FASD, when people go through schools and
Mhm,
other systems within our society where we're blamed, shamed, and punished for our wiring, for the
mhm.
differences that we have.
Yeah.
Is it any wonder that we're anxious? Is it any wonder we struggle with depression? All of that is predictable, because the environment is where the change needs to be.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I talked to somebody last week and, they said like the 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 trauma sometimes for neurodivergent people is actually just living in a world that's not designed for you.
Yeah.
It's like that is the trauma.
Yeah.
It's on top of the life stuff that you have. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Big T trauma versus little t trauma, being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world that doesn't give us
mhm,
the space or honor those differences. Yeah, that's definitely a little t
mhm,
daily trauma.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. This has just been delightful to. Can I invite you back again sometime?
absolutely. I would love
We'll
to.
Awesome. We'll keep going with this. So what's the company that you work for, since you have a neurodiverse track? I would love to, you know, let people know they can seek you out if they need to. Where are you located?
Yeah, so we're located in Massachusetts, just north of Boston.
Okay.
A place called Winchester. And we are, Insight Recovery. We have Insight Recovery Treatment Center, and then we have
Okay.
Insight Recovery Mental Health. Both, two completely different programs, same
Mhm.
area. Yeah, that's what we do. We love what we do.
Okay.
I'm extremely passionate about this. I think, the neurodivergence just added a whole another layer to
Yeah.
what how we can revamp recovery and communities and education and things like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
just thank you for inviting me on here and learning more about FASD,
Yeah.
which now I'm going to go on a obsession tangent and know as much as I about it because it's important.
Well,
It's
it's a
important.
hidden
It's very
epidemic.
important.
It's a
Yeah,
hidden epidemic. I mean, look at our
absolutely.
numbers compared to, not to discount autism. Again, I applaud the results that they've gotten from banding together, right?
Yes.
It's been phenomenal. Sorry, but we dwarf you guys, and
Listen, and
and we're still in the shadows.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my diagnosis might not be complete, so I need to know this, right? And so
Sorry. No,
it's
I was
really
probably out of line saying that, but
no, no, listen. This is exactly what you want. You gotta challenge, you gotta like
yeah.
there's things out there and it's your story too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this was your story. And if you somebody else that is in a similar
Yeah.
situation, then
But
they'd be doing a disservice.
there was a delivery room nurse who
Hmm.
was having a conversation with a young mother who broke down sobbing after the delivery of her child,
Hmm.
wanting to know, was her kid okay? And the nurse was like a little taken aback by that level of
Hmm.
fear, right?
Hmm.
And she said, "Well, I drank." And the nurse documented it in the chart. And when the OB-GYN saw that, he came unglued on that nurse. How
Hmm.
dare you put that in her chart? She's a good woman. It's that stigma, and
Yeah.
it's damaging enough for that young mother.
Hmm.
But how many other women, coming through the maternity clinics, going through delivery, how many people did that nurse interact with that she dared not ask that question? So how many children did not get early intervention because the exploration of the issue never happened, right?
Probably all of them.
It's, one in 12,
Hmm.
even if it's 1 in 20, that's a lot of people,
Yeah.
you know? I know I don't know if you're physically at the office today or if you're at home, but I
Yeah.
can just imagine you're going to open up the door and be in the unit, and you're going to look around and you're going to divide the number of people you see by
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
Which one of my colleagues?
Yeah. I do that. I do that already
Right?
with them. I go, no, neurodivergent. I know. Yep. I can see
Yep.
it.
Yep. Well, this has been absolutely delightful, Jon. It's been an honor to spend this time with you. I'm so glad you could come on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Patty.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Well, everyone, that's a wrap for this week, but we'll see you next time on Living with FASD.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Living with FASD. Hopefully, this episode added to the breadth and depth of your knowledge about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and I hope that it also made you laugh along the way. Please email me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com if there are any comments you want to make, questions that you want to ask, topics you want me to cover, or people that you think would make a great guest for the show. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. By helping my podcast grow, you will be doing your part to help raise awareness and understanding about FASD, which is something we surely can agree needs to happen. I also wanted to remind you to look in the show notes if you would like to order a copy of my book, Sip by Sip, Candid Conversations with Adults Living with FASD. You can find the ordering link in the show notes, and it is now also available in large print. If you find, like me, find that words tend to swim on the page if the font is too small. Also in the show notes, you will find a Calendly link, which is my e-calendar. If you want to reach out to me and talk about any coaching needs that you might have for you or someone in your family, or if you want to talk about training, if you want me to bring me into your community organization or the company that you work for, I'm happy to do trainings about FASD as well. So those things are available to you. And this time, as always, if there are links or books or whatever else that my guest has brought to the show, you'll find those links in the show notes as well. Anyway, that's a wrap for today. I hope that you have a good week, and we will see you next time on Living with FASD.